Your book is written. Now what? At this point, you've written your rough draft and now you are like, what am I supposed to do next? How do I get to the next stage? And what's the order of which I should do this? Well, in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to selectively self-edit your manuscript so that you can make your book absolutely incredible. Now, let's start about this. First of all, you finished your book. So you got to start celebrating, okay? I'm a big believer in that you celebrate the journey and the pursuit of the destination. And so you finish your rough draft. That is a moment worth celebrating. So if you haven't already, celebrate the crap out of that. Now, the next stage is your book's written. So now we want to self-edit the book. This, in a nutshell, is when we are going to review our book ourselves before we submit it to the editor. And it's your chance to go through your book from start to finish and really dial it in. You have all the puzzle pieces now. Now we got to put them in the right structure and the right format. Now, my name is Jake Kelfer, and I'm a 4-time best-selling author who's turned my books into multiple successful businesses in the speaking, coaching, and book publishing space. This is my book, Big Idea to Bestseller, and I currently run a company, a publishing house called Big Idea to Bestseller, which is a full-service book publishing company designed to help entrepreneurs and executives write, publish, launch, and market nonfiction books for back-end business and growth. I've worked with hundreds of authors around the world, helping them turn their ideas, their stories, and their expertise into best-selling books, and I want to help you do the same. I even wrote my last book in less than an hour a day, and it is entirely documented. But this video is about self-editing. How do we move you from finished manuscript to the production phase? And self-editing is the part of the process that people start to wonder, like, what's the purpose of this? Why do I need to go through my book? I just wrote my book. Shouldn't I have someone else edit it now? And you'll get there. But self-editing is really where you can polish up your manuscript. Because the way that I like to think about books is I like to really make sure that I get all of my material out in my messy rough draft. Why? Because if I can get everything out in my messy rough draft first, I can often speed up my process. Versus if I take years and years and years to write, revise, time can take too long. So now I'm at a stage where the messy rough draft is written. I need to polish it up a little bit. And I'm going to talk to you about the two different types of self-editing that I encourage people to do. Now, self-editing is a stage, like I said, before you send your book to the manuscript. And there are two types of self-editing. You have the verbal read-through and the chapter-by-chapter read-through. Now, let's talk about what the verbal read-through really means and how you can actually do it. The verbal read-through is where once your manuscript is done, you're going to actually verbally read it out loud. One of the things that I have found both as a reader and as an author to be really amazing is when the book feels good, when the book feels like the author is speaking to me. And so as the author, I want you to speak your book out loud, and that way you can really see, does everything flow? Are the sentences dialed in? Do you need to elaborate on a story? Do you need to take out some details because you gave too much information? What information does the reader really need to know? And so the verbal read-through, it's going to be incredibly helpful to hear your book. This allows you to imagine that you are writing the book for a singular person. It highlights the areas of improvements in both the content and the writing style. If you're a first-time author, this is really advantageous to you because sometimes you're like, I don't even know how to actually structure this or write this. And so when you do the verbal read-through, you're like, this is a part I need to elaborate on. Or you're like, this part should have definitely come before or after this other part. And this is what the verbal read-through will do. It'll give you a real sense of the content you've actually created and written. And lastly, it will help you dial in your voice. Okay, a lot of the best books that I read in today's nonfiction realm are books that I can relate to, are books that I can feel as if the author is talking directly to me. And so when you do the verbal read through, it is you as if you're talking to a reader. So does it feel good to you? Does it feel like the way your audience would respond to? And if so, this is going to make the process really, really great. Now, when you're self-editing and you're doing your verbal read-through, this is where you do now edit and make your changes. Whereas in the rough draft process, we said, write. Don't edit as you go. Well, the verbal read-through, now you can go about doing that. Next is the chapter-by-chapter read-through. So you've done the verbal read-through. And at this point, I'll be honest, I'm the same way. You might be getting tired of reading your book. You just spent time writing it. Now you verbally read it through. So what I want you to do is give yourself a day to just relax. Some people want a day, some people want 2 days, whatever you need. Just take a second to relax. Okay? Take a second to relax, recoup yourself, and then let's dive in. Now, the chapter by chapter read through, this is where you literally read through your book chapter by chapter. And the goal of this is this will help keep you organized and on track. So I would encourage you to do a chapter a day, 2 chapters a day. Find, depending on the length of your book, how many chapters you have, kind of break this down into what you feel is a reasonable amount. Now, when we work with people on this, we help create the structure for them so that their timeline can continue to speed up. But for you, just create a structure. If you have 10 chapters, 2 a day, 5 days, take the weekend off, right? Figure out what works for you. But you want to go chapter by chapter, and you want to go through and make sure you touched on everything that you originally had in your outline. Does everything that you actually wrote in your rough draft relate to the reader? Or did you get taken on several different tangents? Are the stories you told in the right order? Does everything flow? Is the process in which you want to teach things the way you actually wrote things? I find that the chapter by chapter self-edit is really, 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 really effective in helping me dial in my core messages and making sure that I shared everything the way I want to share everything. Because ultimately, I want to make sure that this book is primed and ready to be sent to the editor where they'll really help me dial it in and make it ultimately super professional. But this really helps you start to feel real as you go through your book from start to finish. This is such an incredible part of this process. And while it can be a tedious part, I'm not going to lie, it can be tedious because you're reading through and reading through. But this is often a part where you recognize how much you actually know about your topic, or you relive some of the experiences after writing them and are like, yes, this is meant to be shared with somebody. Okay, this is the self-editing process. Now, I'm going to give you a couple suggestions on how you can really maximize this process and not get too lost in the sauce. So here we go. Your book will need some work, okay? If you did your rough draft correctly, your book will need work, all right? That's amazing. This is the time when you're self-editing to add or delete certain parts. When I was writing my book, Big Idea to Bestseller, which is all about how to write, publish, and launch a book, I had added things, and then when I went back and self-edited, I realized, you know what? This particular thing that I had added a story, this is more of a distraction, and it just makes the book longer. There's no need to include this. And my checklist that I go through when adding or deleting is, did I share enough to get the reader the result they're looking for? If the answer is yes, then you're good. If the answer is no, then elaborate more on either the story or the lesson or the message. Remember, our goal is to create a great book that shares our expertise, shares our experience, and ultimately helps the reader get the result, which is why they picked up your book in the first place. Now that your book is written, here's the next tip, okay? When you're starting your rough draft, you often have a different style than the time you finish your rough draft. Why? Because you've gotten repetition, you've gotten practice, you've written thousands of words. You're starting to feel a little bit different. So in the self-editing phase, this is where you want to make sure that your voice is actually cohesive. One of the things that I've personally noticed in myself and with the hundreds of authors we work with is the person you are and the author you are on page 1 is likely a less evolved version of the author you are by the end of your book. And for some people, the shift happens in chapter 2, chapter 8, 75% of the way through. It depends. But when you self-edit your book, this is a great opportunity for you to make sure that everything feels the same and the person that you finish this book with and the person that you want to really release to the world in the form of your book is represented. This is where you're going to rearrange. Okay, this is where you're going to rearrange. You're going to adjust. You're going to add, subtract, delete. You're going to move one chapter around here, one chapter around here. You might realize that you thought you should teach it in this order, but when you read through it again, you realize you should teach it in a different order. This is really, really great for you if you're writing a book that's based on helping someone achieve a specific result. Okay, now this might be my biggest tip related to self-editing is this. You are going to want to revise forever. Because let me tell you something, you will always have a revision to make. Both in the form of literally you read your book, you're like, I could always make this better. But also from the standpoint of every day that you're alive, every day that you're doing something, you're going to feel that you're learning something new or that you should add to your book. And I get that. And so here's what I would say is done is better than perfect at this time. Your editor will tell you if you need to add more to dig in deeper. But what I would just encourage you to do is when you're self-editing, give yourself a goal time frame of when you want to be done self-editing, and then just get everything done within that time frame. That way you don't extend this over and over and over again. You can't over revise, and you can't allow your life to just keep happening and happening and happening. I'll tell you this, I'll be honest. Every book that I've written, a month after it's out, I can always add something new. And that's just the nature. When you've written a book that's 10 years old, you've done that. But here's what's really cool. When you work with a company like ours, or you write your book, you can always go back and make a revised or an expanded or an updated version of the book that encapsulates all of your new knowledge and life experiences if it's related to that particular book. So don't worry about that. As a matter of fact, instead, really, really lock in and just make sure that you don't over revise in this part. Next, stick to your book time and make a deadline. We just talked about this. And then rely on your accountability partner for feedback and questions, okay? And rely on me too. I'm happy to answer your questions. And by the end of this, you should have a complete book. This should be the best version of your manuscript that you are capable of doing without the support of an editor. Once you're done self-editing, whether you've done this alone or you've worked with a writing coach, you've worked with a team, now you're going to have a self-edited book that's ready to be sent to the editor who's going to help make the book even better and more professional. So look, now you know how to turn your draft into a polished manuscript. And if you like this and you want to go deeper into this process, I wrote a book called Big Idea to Bestseller. And it's literally the step-by-step guide on how to write, publish, and launch a nonfiction book. And you can go to bigideatobestseller.com/free-book. And I'll send you a free copy. Just cover the shipping and I'll mail it directly to your doorstep. Now, if you know you're going to need some help in this process and you want someone to evaluate your manuscript if it's already written and help you with all the editing part of the process, or if you just want someone to help you be able to craft a book so you could go right through the entire book process in less than a year, in several months actually, then go ahead and visit bigideatobestseller.com/call and you can book a time to speak with our team. And on our call, we're going to discuss your idea, what you want from the book, how you're going to get there, what's stopping you, and we're going to literally create your roadmap on how you can go through this entire process efficiently and effectively. So I hope you enjoyed this. And I hope that as you self-edit your book, you start to see this as an exciting part of the process that gets you one step closer versus just a tedious process of really going through your book. And that's it. That's self-editing. You got this.